Meghan and Harry is lockdown, is social justice, is everything. Man, that's a clever title. Well, you know. Look, does Cooper Stuff actually care about Meghan and Harry and the royals? Meghan and Harry being on Oprah is just a little bit of a side drama, just like all the other little dramas. It's not about the drama, but those dramas are a microcosm of a larger picture that is ripping apart not just America, but the world at the moment. And it is this: we don't know how to find truth anymore. All that we believe in is emotion. We will believe anything as long as it is given to us with the right amount of emotional narrative. We don't teach people to think, we teach people to emote. Today's episode may be a little bit less religiously focused. It might just be a little bit more culture analysis. We're going to jump into it. So let's get to it. It's time for the best part of the week, Cooper Stuff. Cooper Stuff. Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to Cooper Stuff. It's so good to be back. We just announced this week, as you may have seen, Skillet is going back on tour, baby. It's time to get some metal on. Okay, now here's the thing. We're going out on a drive-in tour. I didn't know if I believed it would happen or not, because am I the only one that feels that we're getting a lot of mixed messages? Right? It's true. From lockdowns to the COVID numbers, we're not... anything you say is going to get you in the jackpot, right? And this isn't a good jackpot. This isn't like the jackpot when you play Monopoly, like you get all the money in the middle. This is the jackpot like, you're in trouble. The internet jackpot, Twitter prison, Twitter jail, Facebook jail. I mean, it's like no matter what you say, you're going to make people mad on one side or the other. And everything has become a political issue, right? Even saying that we're going on tour. Some people are mad we're going on tour because we're COVID deniers. It's like, you say you go on tour, you're a COVID denier. Oh, you're an anti-masker. You're an anti-that. Every single thing you do now has a political implication, which is what we're going to talk about today. Because the personal has become the political. And actually, the personal has become the political, and the political has become the religious. It's true. Personal has become the political. Political has become the religious, even if it's just humanism. I don't even mean it has to be religious like believing in a God, but it's like a religious movement. Everybody has religious values, even if they're atheistic, humanistic religious values based on what you decide to do. So if you say, I'm not going to wear a mask, that puts you in one political camp, which is somehow some sort of like almost religious camp. If you say you have to wear a mask or you're a bad person, well, that puts you in the other political camp, which is a religious thing. Everything you do now is a political issue. And that's why, look, Meghan and Harry, I don't know anything about the royals. Nobody that's ultra smart watches Cooper Stuff to find out brilliant information. Wrong podcast. Wrong one. I'm not a brilliant person. People don't watch Cooper Stuff to hear something absolutely brilliant. People watch Cooper Stuff because they're like, I kind of feel this way too. And maybe you don't know why you do. Sometimes people go, I feel the same way, but I didn't know why, or I didn't know how to say it. That's why you watch Cooper Stuff. And because my beard's gorgeous. Hey, maybe I'm funny. I don't even know why. But I do culture analysis mainly for people that are like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I think I kind of agree with that. So let's get a little culture analysis. I'll make fun of myself up in here. I don't know anything about the royals. The royals isn't my thing. I could care less about whatever drama there is going on. But it's all the same. It's just a microcosm of everything. Let me ask you this. Why would anybody, why would anybody believe anything somebody says on an interview? I'm serious. I don't. I'm not trying to be political, and yet I know this puts me in a political camp. Right? It's true. If you don't like what Meghan and Harry said, now you're a mean person. You're a racist, basically. Right, left, or center. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Donald Trump or Meghan or anybody in between. Whatever. Okay? I don't care. Right, left, or center. Somebody goes on TV and makes a claim about anything in the whole world. Why would anybody believe it 100%? That's just dumb. There used to be a time when people would have a certain level of skepticism, like, yeah, we'll have to see let's see what the other side says. Like, wow, if that's true, it's pretty bad, but we don't know if that's true. We used to have like our brains would be like, there's some implications there, but I would like to find, we would even be like, yeah, but they have an agenda. Obviously, it benefits them to say this because of fill in the blank. We don't teach people how to think anymore, and we don't teach people to have any presuppositions. I heard this twice in the last week, and because I'm really, really smart, if I hear two smart people say the same thing in a week, I go, that must be something that's worth listening to, okay? So one of my pastors said this at church. 2 days later, James White said the same thing on the dividing line. Basically this, we don't think presuppositional anymore, and we don't, even in the church, we don't really teach presuppositions as we ought. And so because we don't, basically, this is what I've saw happening, and I've said this on my podcast several times. People go on and they hear these emotional stories, you hear these narratives, and you pick them out one at a time, right? Somebody comes on and they says, well, they said this about, Prince Harry and me having a baby, and they didn't want us around because, fill in the blank, blah, blah, blah. You've seen the interview probably. And everybody goes, wow, if that's true, then that must be really bad. They pick out this one thing rather than having presuppositions. A presupposition in this case would be this. Are you ready for it? Everybody lies. Everybody, right, left, center. I don't care what political spectrum you come, what religion you come from. Everybody lies. I think I heard that on some philosopher. Oh yeah, Dr. House. It's from the TV show House. He's not a philosopher. It's fiction, but it's still true. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody has somewhere where they're coming from. Humans are born into sin, and we do a lot of nasty stuff, and we are all capable of doing really wicked things. You turn on the TV, a presupposition is you are being fed a narrative. You're being fed something. Even Christians are falling into this thing where every little argument they hear, rather than having any presuppositions about it, they just go, oh, they're crying. It must be a good argument. Crying does not make it a good argument. So we don't know how to find truth anymore. And young people are being raised in such a difficult time. So I hope this can encourage young people watching. I don't care if you're religious or not, by the way. If you're Christian or not Christian, this is not really necessarily a religious episode, all right? This isn't about my Christian faith. Primarily, this is just about culture. This is about learning how to think, okay? I wrote in my book, I shared this story, and it's, you have to get the book to find out the whole story. But I'm making fun of myself. I'm telling a pretty embarrassing story about my life. As a lot of people know, my mom passed away when I was a freshman in high school and went through this hard period of time. So I shared this story in my book about how basically, a short version, I lied to a teacher to get out of trouble. And I used my mom's death as an excuse. It's a really embarrassing story. Not proud of it. It's shameful, but I did it. But I share this story to say that in that time, in my brain, I wouldn't have had the philosophical understanding that this is what I was doing. But basically what I was doing was basically saying this, because my mom died, and because that's really hard, and because that sucks super bad, that it gives me access to a higher truth, right? I didn't know that's what I was feeling, but it sort of justified the lie. I'm like, yeah, I'm lying, but hey, I went through something really bad. And I'm writing about it in the book is basically saying, no, that's still a lie. It doesn't actually give you access to a higher truth. It doesn't justify anything. You're actually just lying. But in our brains, we begin to make this little justification of, well, because my mom died, I must understand things that other people don't. Now, of course, it's going to give me a life experience that someone maybe can't quite relate to. But it doesn't give me access to higher truth, and that's what we're talking about. Truth is either fixed or it is not fixed. But we have created this system with various philosophies that we've talked about on Cooper stuff. I won't mention them all right now. And I know some people get kind of triggered by mentioning them. So I'm not going to mention the philosophies. But we've created this sort of hierarchy of truth that you have to have suffered. You have to have been through some sort of victimhood in order to gain you access to the truth. We saw that same thing in the Meghan and Harry, interview, didn't we? Like, what is better than being a prince? Being a victim? That's what's better than being a prince in 2021. You can get more money by being a victim than a prince. You can get more fame. You can get more, here boy, woke cookies from being a victim than you can be a prince these days, right? We're going to talk about that in a second. Let me read you something from my book. Why? Because my book's good and because I'm advertising it. what do you think this is? Let me read this. So I'm writing basically about how that shouldn't give you access to truth. I'm comparing that to what we began to see 2013, 14, 15, moving up into the Brett Kavanaugh situation, and when we began hearing, hashtag believe women, and you have to believe her truth, and this, that, and the other, and I'm explaining this. So I'm going to read this little quote from the book. So I'm talking right now about Kavanaugh. The insinuation being made was that whether or not the assault literally happened, we're talking about from Miss Blasey Ford, right? I hope you know what I'm talking about. The insinuation being made was that whether or not the assault literally happened, Blasey Ford's truth is a higher truth. Rather than appealing to facts, evidence, or a trial, her truth appeals to a greater sense of how women have historically been mistreated. So, as a woman who is inherently a victim of the patriarchy, and secondly, as an alleged victim of sexual abuse, she has access to a higher level of truth than a man. Still not following? It goes something like this. Women have been assaulted, harassed, and paid poorly in the workplace for generations. The men who have assaulted and harassed them have gotten away with it. Therefore, what she feels as in dreaded air quotes there. Therefore, what she feels is paramount and justifies her claim to truth, just as I was justified in lying to my band director. You have to buy the book to find out what I'm talking about, but that's the story about lying to my band director, basically. It may not literally be true, but it feels true. Big advertisement for a book. I've had great feedback. Thank you so much for telling me. You can only get it on my website, johnlcooper.com/awake. I also want to say we have group discounts, and we are selling a lot to groups, which is something I'm very, very encouraged about. So if you've got a small group or a youth group, or a home group, whatever your church calls it, whatever, a study group, a book group. My wife has a book group that they go through books and whatever. This is a great one, and you can get it at a group discount there, and it's great for young people because it's just like me. It's not too academic, okay? Theology for Dummies. Go check it out, please. johnlcooper.com. The book is Awake and Alive to Truth. So I read that in order to say that is precisely what we saw with the Meghan and Harry interview with Oprah. Now, let me say this. I have no horse in the game. I'm agnostic towards it. How can I possibly know? How can you possibly know? That's the point. How can we possibly know what actually happened in the royal family or not? We can't actually know these things. There's no way to find out. Yet we jump to a conclusion. Now, we all have our ideas, right? And I'm not saying that you can't have an opinion. I'm not saying that I can't have an opinion. The problem is when your opinion is different than mine, and then I just blast you for it as a racist or as a bad person or as someone that doesn't care about abuse or something like that, because you can't possibly know the thing. So the minute that you say an opinion, all of a sudden, the personal, meaning the opinion, the personal becomes the political, then the political becomes religious. That's what happened. You take your sides, and now we are basically in a religious battle for the thing. I want to explain a little bit about political visions and why they are religious in a moment. But first, I just want to share some of the Harry Meghan stuff. It is more profitable in 2021 to be a victim than it is a prince or a princess. This is amazing stuff. I'm assuming what I read was correct. I don't know this for a fact, but what it sounded like is that they live in a mansion in California that's worth $14 million. Where do you think they got $14 million from? I don't know. The royal family? They want to create this emotion of how much they've been mistreated. One of the things she said was that she didn't know how to curtsy. So Meghan had to learn how to curtsy in order to meet the Queen. Is that the worst thing that you've suffered this year? I'll curtsy right now up in here. I mean, I would rather curtsy than to sit at home without work for a full year. right? I mean, like, oh, this is unbelievable. These are people that will never have to worry about money. They will never, ever worry about, I don't know if I'm going to be able to send my kids to a decent school. They'll never have to worry about that. They'll never have to worry about, am I going to be able to put food on the table? What happens if, fill in the blank, what happens if it's taken care of? You're a royal. And you're mad that you had to curtsy? It's the queen, dude. It's the queen, okay? Oh, there's a certain amount of respect you have for a possible future in-law anyway, much less the queen. Oh, that's annoying. Let me ask the king. Hey, king, is that annoying? The king says, get over it, okay? I said it, yeah. This, of course, leads up to what I really can't stand, and that is the race implication. It's not even implication, it's a race accusation. She said to Oprah, well, someone said to Harry, I wonder how dark the baby's skin will be, like how much, color will there be in the skin or something like that. I'm just so tired of the race. The racism thing is just a bludgeon. It's like, and you can use it at any time, and it works at any time. It's like it's a boogeyman. It doesn't have to be proven. There doesn't have to be any intent that's proven. It can even just be a lie. As long as you say it, you've won the argument. It's like, you know what? It's like Kaiser Soze. Racism accusation is the new Kaiser Soze, right? That's from Usual Suspects, right? Kaiser Soze. It's like the boogeyman that nobody don't say his name. It's the name that must not be mentioned, right? Which is actually Harry Potter, but you get it. Don't mention the name Kaiser Soze because they might show up. It's the boogeyman. I think in Usual Suspects, then they say something like it's the boogeyman. It's things that like parents tell their children, you better be good and go to bed or else Kaiser Soze will visit you. It's Kaiser Soze. As long as you say the racism argument, Kaiser Soze's here. Done. Everybody's done. Everybody's demolished. And so now you've won the argument. And now if somebody like me comes out and says, how do we know if this is racism or not? Boom. Now all the woke mob has to come after me, even though I'm not even saying she's a liar. I'm saying, how can we possibly know a thing? There needs to be more than this. We are creating a society where we value victimhood as higher truth. It's just higher up on the hierarchy ladder. Whoever's a victim gets, go up the tier. One tier, woman. Next tier, person of color. Next tier, they called me a name that was racist, or they said a racist thing. Nobody needs to prove intent. Nobody needs to prove anything. As long as it's an emotional argument, it will win. That is going to destroy the world. And it already has. I can't believe it's coming to the church. Granted, it did take longer to come to the church in some ways than other places, but it's in the church. So now, as long as you make an emotional argument about anything, and basically the church version is this, in case you're like, I don't know if I believe that, John. Here's the church version. Church version would be something like this, like, yeah, but this person that I know struggles with this sin, and are you telling me that God wouldn't accept them like they are? And that, it feels really mean to me. God wouldn't be mean. God doesn't do mean stuff. And so how can we possibly say that? Let's just don't mention it because God is a God of love. Boom, you're there. You're there. There's no presuppositions anymore. There's no presupposition that God gets to make the rules. I just said this wasn't going to be a religious episode, but I can't help it because I love the Bible. God makes the rules. Whatever he says is right. Whatever he says is actually loving. Why? Because God is love. So whatever he says is actually loving. Even if, guess what? Wait for it. Even if you think it's mean, it's still loving. Even if I go, whoa, that's man, that's harsh, Lord. Are you sure? Yeah, he's sure. He is the Lord Almighty, not me. Whatever he says goes. Whatever he says is right. Oh my gosh, I'll start preaching. No presuppositions in the church. No presuppositions in the world either. Well, they said this thing and I took it to be racist. So it is so. And if anybody says that it's not, well, that's a personal opinion that is now political. And now since it's political, it has to become religious. This is the same thing. I saw online after, last week, I talked about cancel culture. The weirdest thing. So if you believe that cancel culture is real, and if you're concerned about it, boom, it's a political argument now. I'm so happy that Bill Maher actually agrees with me. Bill Maher, not a conservative. Last I checked, not a Christian. I'm pretty sure he thinks Christians are stupid. That Bill Maher.
And finally, new rule, liberals need a stand your ground law for cancel culture, so that when the woke mob comes after you for some ridiculous offense, you'll stand your ground. Stop apologizing. If you think it's just for celebrities, no. In an era where everyone is online, everyone is a public figure. It's like we're all trapped in the hills have eyes and Wi-Fi. Take Mr. Emmanuel Cafferty. He was a San Diego gas and electric worker, but he got fired because someone reported him making a white supremacist hand gesture outside the window of his truck. But he's not a white supremacist, he's Latino. And he wasn't making a hand gesture, he was probably just flicking a booger. Is this really who we want to become? Walking on eggshells, always looking over your shoulder about getting ratted out for something that actually has nothing to do with your character or morals? Think about everything you've ever texted, emailed, searched for, tweeted, blogged, or said in passing, or now even just witnessed. Someone had a Confederate flag in their dorm room in 1990 and you didn't do anything? And 62% of Americans say they have opinions they're afraid to share. 80% of Americans, young, old, rich, poor, conservative, liberal, white, minority, all hate the current atmosphere of hypersensitivity. Yeah, everybody hates it, and no one stands up to it. Because it's always the safe thing to swallow what you really think and just join the mob. And she made some Nazi analogy. Who doesn't these days? You're like the Nazis is the new I don't like you. It's always okay when Trump's the Nazi. By the way, you can't work in Hollywood if you don't believe what we believe. Yeah, in the 50s, that's exactly what the left complained they were being told. They're thinking about it in Illinois. Yes, the land of Lincoln might cancel Lincoln. Memo to social justice warriors, when what you're doing sounds like an Onion headline, stop.
It's really refreshing to see people on the left come out and say this, but Bill Maher is now being slammed by people more left than him. So the idea, anytime you have an opinion, you're put into a political box, and then it becomes a religious battle. And so now, because it's religious, see, here's how things work with religion. And this is what I mean by this. So let me explain, because some people might be like, I don't know what you mean by a religious battle. And you got somebody like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a political analyst. He is religious as well. He's Jewish. But Ben Shapiro always says, hey, I don't make arguments from religious arguments. So he would be like, I don't use the Bible as the point of my arguments because I'm going to that's a higher authority. But if you don't agree with the Bible, then you don't agree with my authority. So there's no reason to have that debate. That's his point of view because he's a political analyst, which I think is actually, quite smart for his job. Well, for me, I'm not a political analyst. I want to teach people how to just simply live for Jesus. This is what the Bible means. It's not that hard to understand. It's not that hard to do. This is what it means. Quit getting confused. So if I'm arguing with somebody on some sort of political issue, if it's a moral issue, why just go to the Bible? Because the Bible, I agree with Shapiro in this, the Bible is the higher authority. But I'm not a political analyst, so the Bible's the end of the discussion for me. That is a religious argument, you see? So if we are arguing about abortion, I will try to engage on a political level. Okay, I will try to engage on laws and the family unit and how this actually hurts women and how people struggle with depression after having abortions. There's a lot of statistics out there to use. I will try to engage, but in the end, it's not really a political argument for me. That's a religious argument. Because religion is the end all be all. It is the highest of all authority. When I say that the political has become religious, what I mean is this, is that there are a lot of people that the end all be all for them is not the Bible or the Old Testament, as it would be for Ben Shapiro, or the Quran, or whatever that may be. The end all be all for them is just humanism. It's just maybe some people know what humanism is, but Humanism is basically thinking that all of the world's problems can be solved by men. We don't need a higher authority. It's not about the supernatural. It's not about anything in a spiritual realm, any sort of higher power. This is all about us. It's about me. It's about reaching our end goals, all based on human achievement. That's basically what people mean when they say humanism. It's atheistic, that sort of philosophy. So if you are humanist, then that is the end all be all is man. So in other words, you kind of are the God, right? It's with a little g, not a big G. You are the God of that system. So if you're the God of the system, well, then now the personal has all come political. So that means that every political thing that you believe is religious now. And so now what you have is, I mean, we see this on the hard right, but we as well, or we see on the alt right, but the alt-right doesn't really have that much juice. You know what I mean? Like they're a small amount of people that, for the most part, all Americans don't like, including conservatives, okay? This is a small group. What you're seeing on the hard left, that's where the juice is. We're not talking about liberals, we're talking about leftists, okay? It's further past. But the problem is that the liberals, like Bill Maher, are being shut up by the leftist. Why? Because the leftist is a religious movement. And that is where the juice of the political party is. So the left is clamped down on everybody else because it's a religious battle now. The personal has become political. The political has become religious for them. So all of these little things that we talk about, whether it be cancel culture, I talked about Dr. Seuss last week, and some people are like, why are conservatives making such a big deal about Dr. Seuss? It's not that the Dr. Seuss thing is a big deal. It is a microcosm of something really scary. Let me explain why this is scary. It's become religious because it shut down the debate. It shuts down the debate 100% entirely. Why? Because we don't actually think. We have emotional arguments based on victims of hierarchy. Let me show you an example of why this is scary.
I have to tell you, I don't think Oprah, I don't think anyone who watched it, especially any person of color, is surprised that the British family, that there was racism there. And so the whole institution is built on a racist structure. So there should not be a, oh my God, the British family is racist. Of course they're racist. That's what the entire monarchy is built on. The racism, the family that is supposed to be in that only by birth. And so far by birth, it's only been white royals on the British throne. Brianna, also, when people say, well, we haven't heard from the other side. What's the other side going to say? They're going to say, oh, of course, we're not racist or whatever. But what did they do? Think about their actions. They did not stand up for their own, because their own was married to a black woman, had a black child. They didn't listen to him inside of the royal family. They let him go. They let him leave the country. They wouldn't come to terms with what they wanted to do. So, listen, we've only heard from one side, but that one side at this point rings very true.
There you go. Don Lemon says, Don Lemon's a journalist, by the way. All right. Don Lemon's like, we don't even need the other side. We already have the truth. Why? Because she's a woman, and she's a woman of color, and she claimed racism. Kaiser Soze is here. That's it. Kaiser Soze is coming. That's all you need to know. What's going to happen to me, Kaiser Soze? That's it. Kaiser Soze. That's it. You're screwed now, son. That is a pretty scary place to be. We have to teach presuppositions in our thinking. Listen, if you're a parent, you've got to start teaching worldview to your kids. I wish that I had been taught more worldview. I wish that in my early days of Skillet that I had a lot more worldview training. Luckily, I didn't go off the rails and say or think and do totally weird stuff. I was always passionate about Jesus, thankfully. Thankfully, I was passionate about sanctification, not that I didn't do tons of stupid stuff. We all fall short of the glory of God, of course. But thankfully, I was serious about my walk with the Lord. But I wish that I had been taught more worldview. You've got to teach presuppositional worldview to your kids. We've got to do that. Young people, we've got to start understanding that just because something's emotional does not mean that it is true. That's what's no matter what we're talking about. So President Biden just came on and gave his speech about lockdowns. Am I the only one confused as poop? I am so confused about what's going on. And I know somebody's going to, here John goes. It's political. Now it's religious. I'm just sharing an opinion, bro. Bruh. Is anybody as confused as me? It's like, I look at the COVID numbers. Am I crazy? I literally may be crazy. You can give me a comment, tell me I'm crazy. I don't mind. I look at the COVID numbers, unless I'm being lied to, they seem to be like, they seem to be dropping like crazy. I'm talking about not only number of deaths, but number of people actually getting COVID. Hospitalization numbers are way down. They came out with new stuff about the vaccine saying they're actually more working better than people thought. I'm not vaccinated, but I know a lot of people that are. And all the numbers are like, it's 94% effective. All this really good news is coming out. It looks like. Then President Biden comes on and said, guys, we're going to get through this. It's going to be great. And we have hope and we're all coming back. So he gave this sort of uplifting thing. And then he said, so here's what we're trying to do. July 4th, if things go good, you can have a few family members over for a cookout outside. And then he says, not large groups. So I'm like, what? Then why? I don't know what this means. I am so confused because we can't get real information because everything we're being lied to constantly. Why? Because everybody lies. Everybody has an agenda on TV. They just feed you propaganda. Let me end with this. Just a tiny little political philosophy. I know that a lot of people don't like political philosophy. If you understand political philosophy, it's presuppositional. And all of this just makes a lot more sense. So if you're out there going, well, come everybody's screaming all the time, it's just because of political philosophy and presuppositional thought. That you take any issue you want, Cat in the Hat, or not Cat in the Hat, because that book is still around, but Dr. Seuss, Meghan and Harry, COVID lockdowns, mask. You saw it on Cooper Stuff a year ago. I literally think I was the first person, I don't know. I'm not smart and I'm never on the front end of things. As far as I knew, I was one of the first people that came out and said, okay, so it seems like if you want that lockdown has become a political issue. If you want to open up the country, apparently you're a conservative that hates people. And if you don't want to lock up the country, well, apparently you're a liberal. That just kind of seems like where it's all presuppositional. Thomas Sowell explains this the best in my opinion. He's got an amazing book called A Conflict of Visions. If you like philosophy, you got to go check it out. Thomas Sowell, to my knowledge, I don't know if he's religious or not. He's not a religious commentator, all right? He is just a political philosopher, sociologist, historian. He's a genius, one of my biggest heroes. Conflict of Visions, he explains it like this. He has words for it that I find a little confusing, but I'll just explain it really quickly. He says you either follow the constrained vision or the unconstrained vision. And in his definition, what he means by constrained is that if you believe that humanity is constrained in some kind of a way to fixing all of our problems. Remember when I talked about humanism? So humanism says humans can fix all of our problems without any help from any higher being or spirituality or any sort of thing. We can do it all on our own. It's a focus on humanity, not a focus on otherworldly things, okay? That's humanism. So the constrained vision would be this. If you believe that humans are constrained, in other words, we can't reach that ultimate utopia, fix all of our problems, make all the world better, because we are constrained in some kind of a way, then you will tend to have all of these political thoughts. And he lists them out. And it will be based on the way you see taxes, the way you see school systems, the way you see lockdown policy. I mean, he wrote this in the 80s, but it all makes sense. Anything you want to mention will be listed out. It'll make sense from the constrained vision. The unconstrained vision, basically in his words, says that humanity is unconstrained. In other words, we have nothing constraining us. There are no fetters, all right? There are no chains on us. There's nothing stopping us from reaching all of our ultimate end goals. That's what he calls the unconstrained vision. Obviously, you don't have to be a genius to say, okay, so the unconstrained vision then, that we can do it all on ourselves, is basically humanism, and that is basically leftism. And the constrained vision is not only what conservatism would be in general, but that's what Christianity would teach. I know some of you are going to freak out right now because there are some Christians who are liberal. That's for a whole different discussion. But one of my presuppositions that I don't understand with those kind of Christians, to be honest, is How can you be liberal and still have a theology that says that, yeah, we are constrained. We're constrained by our flesh. We're born into sin. So if you're born into sin, then you will have a propensity to do all sorts of wickedness and all sorts of evil. And you will understand that man, without God's help, without adhering to God's laws, you are never going to reach a society that is just. You are never going to reach a society of love and kindness and justice. It's not going to happen. Why? Because we are constrained by our flesh. So it's natural that Christians would have a political philosophy based on a presupposition that everything that the Bible says is true. The Bible teaches that we are born into original sin. You can't find justice on your own. You can't find righteousness on your own. In fact, without God's help, all that you'll find is pain, wickedness. It's going to be pretty bad. It's going to be dark, okay? So that's kind of the strange thing about Christians who are also liberal. Christians, I would imagine, have to have a low view of man, meaning that we are born into original sin. So therefore, how are you going to follow what Thomas Sowell would call the unconstrained path? Meaning, no, we can make it on our own. We can do it all on our own. In other words, the government's going to answer all the problems. And that's why when we talk about lockdowns, when you talk about masks, when you talk about Harry and Meghan, when you talk about Dr. Seuss, it's all like just little microcosms of the same issue, which is that if you follow the unconstrained vision, which I would call humanism, it's a way oversimplified version of it, but I would call it humanism, leftism, whatever, the unconstrained version. If you follow that version, then government has to be the God. Government has to be the Father. Government has to fix racism. How can government fix racism? How can government fix the heart? That's the problem. Meghan and Harry, we have no idea if there was a ton of racism happening over in the royal family. But if there was racism, what if somebody is a racist? Let's just say that there is. Let's just say there is somebody there just racist and is like, oh, this is going to be horrible having this baby. Who knows what that baby looks like? It's a horrible thought, but let's just say that there is. Hypothetically, if somebody comes and whispers that, oh, I wonder what that kid's going to look like. How's the government going to fix that person's heart? It's a personal conversation. Government can't fix that thing because government's not God. Government cannot discern the thoughts and intentions of the heart. That's what the Word of God does, right? It's true. That's what the Word of God does. The Word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and of marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. That's the Word of God, not the government. Government can't fix that stuff. So what you're into now is this position that if I come on and say, hey, I don't think the government can be my father. I don't think the government should be able to tell me that I am not allowed to work for a year. I've got kids to feed. I've got kids to send to school. How am I supposed to live? That's not their job to do that. They should not be allowed to do that. Well, if I do that, all of a sudden, boom, that's a political issue. You're a conservative. And now it's a religious war, even though I didn't mean it as a religious war. That's just a presupposition for a political vision. If you tend to believe that, no, the government should keep us down and we should have mask mandates, and if people don't do it, then the government should mandate it and arrest people well, then what you're saying is that the government can fix all the problems. The government is the Father. The government is the God. The government is the highest, supremest of everything. Now you're in a religious argument, no longer a political argument. So there it is. Meghan and Harry is social justice, is everything, is Dr. Seuss, is cancel culture, is everything. The personal has become the political has become the religious. We need to teach people how to think again. So my last encouragement, if you hear somebody, whether you're a Christian or not, you hear somebody come up on the news or on your social media feed and they have an amazing emotional argument and they bring out somebody and say, are you going to tell this person that? And they say all these emotional things and they cry. That doesn't mean you're winning an argument. That's just being emotional. This being emotive, it is not going to help your life. It's going to lead you into a bad place, and it's happening in Christianity. So a final word to Christians: do not build your theology on people's emotional arguments. I mean, that should be like step one, but I understand why it works. It works for me sometimes too. It has worked for me. So I'm not being mean to anybody. I understand why it works. Don't let it. That is not the way to find truth. Hope you guys have a great week. Thanks so much for watching Cooper Stuff.
Read the Bible.
Hey, all you dudes out there with sweet beards or even stubble, or all you nice wives, moms, and girlfriends, do yourselves a favor and go and get some John Cooper beard oil. This stuff is amazing. Check it out. All you do is you go like this. 2 little dabs. And you rub it in your face. Oh my gosh, it's so good. The best smelling beard oil God ever created. Guys, we have amazing products at hawkandhatchet.com. You got to go check it out. Men's and women's apothecary. We are known mostly for our candles, which are amazing. It's rugged. It's tough. It's manly. Your dude is going to love it.